Welcome to Consulting Mastery, where we help B2B consultants master the business of consulting. I'm Carrie.
And I'm Ahmed. Join us as we explore the art of delivering outstanding client value, earning a higher income, and thriving in today's marketplace. The most damaging activity to the mindset, psyche, and energy of a business owner, including a consultant, is talking to the wrong people. I mean, the folks that you can't help. They're not a good fit. Well, not that you can't help them. They're not a great fit. They're not a perfect fit. They're not right up your alley. They're kind of tangential, a little bit outside the scope of your target market. You could help them, but the offer, the solution, what we call the results mechanism, isn't made for them, wasn't built for them. And so what happens is you end up trying to water down your offer or apply it in scenarios and circumstances and for clients for whom it wasn't really built. And you get objections. People go, "Oh, this doesn't make sense for me. And I'm not sure this is a good fit. And what about this? And what about that?" And many of those objections would not come up and would not arise if the client was a better fit. In other words, you end up losing some faith in your offer, not because there's anything wrong with the offer, but because you're making it to the wrong people.
Let's talk about all the ways in which that does cause problems, because I think that some of the effects are obvious and some of them are not. So let's just talk through that, because I think it's important to recognize why this is so critical before we talk about how to change it. And so, to your point, first thing is you're going to talk to people who are really not a great fit, for whom working with you is probably not the best thing. And, you working with them is also not the best thing for you. And so you have these conversations that bring up these objections. And what people often do then is chase their tail, trying to figure out how to solve for those objections, when the objections themselves aren't really the problem, right? The problem is you're talking to the wrong person who has these objections that aren't necessary for you to resolve, because that's the objection of someone who's not in the bullseye of your target market. So that's one. Also, as you indicated, you start to lose faith in yourself and in your own offer, because now you're getting these objections, right? They're all coming towards you, and you start to just sort of question if you have the actual best solution for anybody at that point. And then beyond that, it's also, there's just an energy that comes from having conversations with people that you click with, right? People that have the way of thinking, that are the kind of person that, are coming in with the attitude and the real issue that lights you up every day. And so conversely, talking to not those people, although they're lovely and would probably be a perfect fit for somebody else, it just sucks the energy right out of the room, right? Like there's an opportunity cost to spending your energy on those folks with whom you are not aligned.
Especially if you as the owner consultant are also selling. If you're doing the sales and you're doing the delivery, this bleeds into everything else too, which I think is where you're trying to go with this. If you're predominantly talking to folks who are not engaging with your services, and that's going to be true for the most part. I mean, most people don't have a 50% plus close rate. So you're going to, for the most part, talk to folks who don't engage. But if it's really imbalanced, like you're closing 10%, anything less than 20%, I think is very problematic. If it's that imbalanced, where less than 20% of the people that you talk to are actually proceeding with your service, and everybody else is hammering you with objections. They don't think it's a good fit. They don't think it's worth the price. It's not worth the money. I talked to somebody a couple of days ago, and I quoted him the price, and he said, "That's way too expensive. It's not worth it." And I just said, I didn't actually say this, but in my mind, I was like, "You're not the right person then." Evidently, like you got to this stage when you probably shouldn't have. We should have disqualified you earlier, because if you're going to get to the finish line with us and we quote you price and you're not convinced on the ROI of that, something went wrong. Either we messed up the sales process, possible, or you're just a bad fit. And I think in this case, it's the latter. And so if you're just talking to people who are bad fits, don't see the value, won't invest, can't invest, or hammer you with questions, any human being is going to eventually start to question themselves, and self-doubt is going to creep in. They're going to wonder, like, is this thing even any good? Even though you have clients perhaps that are engaging with you and getting great value, if you're overwhelmed with evidence that nobody else actually wants the thing except for your very small handful of clients, that's going to chip away at you pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I want to circle back because I hear you talking about close rate, and there's the number, right? The percentage, how much you close. But there's also a bit of a subtlety there between, if you look at the deals that don't close, there are deals that don't close that are still good fits. And then there are the deals that don't close because they're a bad fit. And it's really dangerous to conflate those two, because you are going to talk to people who are a great fit, right? Who have the problem that you solve, who you really connect to, who think that your solution is a great one for them. And still, for some reason, the deal might not close, right? They're not ready at the moment. There's something else going on in their business. Who knows? There could be a million different things. Those conversations, I'm not worried about. The conversations I am worried about, and the ones that we're really talking about, are the conversations you have with people who don't meet that baseline criteria. And if you are talking to a lot of those people, and this happens especially early on, right? When you're building your pipeline and you haven't quite nailed down maybe your messaging, and it's attracting a broader swath than you eventually wanted to. At that point, you don't care so much, right? You're excited. People are responding. I get to talk to them. Everything's great. And sometimes it takes a while to get to the place where you sit back and go, wait a minute. First of all, I've only closed 1 in 10. And secondly, I'm like dreading getting on this next call because, is it going to be that again? And I know I've been on calls where in the first, 5 minutes, you have as well, you realize very quickly, right? Immediately whether they've said something or whether you can just sort of tell from the way they're speaking that it's not going to be a call that's going to end up in a positive place. And if you are having too many of those, yes, occasionally they squeak through, but if you're having too many of those, that's the thing that's dangerous. So I say that because I don't want people to focus entirely on the close rate, but it's about, when you talk to people, are they qualified? Are they the folks that you should in fact be talking to at all?
Yeah, there's a big difference between the vast majority of deals that we don't close are because, in the prospect's words, and they might not use this verbatim, but this is the sentiment: I would love to do this. It's too expensive. I can't afford it. Not that it's not worth it, but I can't afford it, or I can't stomach the price, right? That's very different from, oh, no, that's not, you guys are charging too much. It's not worth it. I don't believe it's going to work. I don't think it's effective. I don't think it's any good. Those are few and far between, and they're worlds apart.
Yeah, nobody wants to be regularly talking to someone. I mean, if the worth, right, if the value is the thing that's being questioned, then, that is a conversation that can spiral consultant pretty quickly.
Yeah. And look, I think the thing here, what makes this really tricky is when you're the one selling and doing delivery, which you may not be that person forever. And, if you're listening, you may not be that person now, but if you are that person, you're selling and you're delivering, this is going to bleed into everything. This is going to bleed into how you show up to client calls. If everyone you talk to from a prospect perspective buys, right? Happily, no objections, easy sales, no problem. Boy, you're going to be really, really good with your clients when it comes to delivery. You're going to deliver top-notch service. You're going to have bulletproof confidence. You're going to be fantastic as a consultant. When you start getting a lot of pushback from the wrong people in the sales conversations, it's really hard to show up to your client conversations with bulletproof confidence that you can get them the results you're looking for, because you just got hammered on that in the previous call. And you can't just turn a switch, go to your client call now, and all of a sudden be the leader, the consultant, the expert that they want you to be. It's really hard to do that.
It is. And I think there's also a practical effect, because you also might at some point close one of these, quote unquote, bad deals, right? Someone that is maybe not the best fit. And you're going to close them and you're going to pat yourself on the back because it was a rough conversation, right? But you got them there, you pulled them over the line. I would also suggest that your chances of serving them well, right, of having them be delighted at the end of their time spent with you is much lower, because you also compromised, right? You compromised on who you want to work with. You compromised on who you can best serve in order to close the deal. And now you are working with this person who is not an ideal fit, whether from a personality kind of fit perspective or because of their actual problem that they're trying to resolve. And there are two problems, right? One is that you have reduced your confidence and you can't just kind of turn it on, to your point, flick the switch. And also you may be working with someone that you are not best equipped to serve.
Yeah, I think this is one of the opportunities of running a business that people neglect. Is when you run a business, you get to choose who you want to work with. And that's maybe an uncomfortable concept for a lot of people, because in larger corporate settings, you never chose your peers and you never chose your clients. And you're kind of forced to interact with people that maybe some of them are, agreeable and some of them are not. When it's your business, you get the choice. You get to choose exactly who you want to work with, what kind of clients, what kind of personalities, what kind of energy. You get to choose your team, your peers. You get to choose all these things. And I just think that most people, in the interest of like bringing in revenue and winning deals, which I get it, it's important, don't really consider how much power they have in making those choices.
Yeah. And, to your point, revenue is important. And we should be clear that neither of us is sitting here saying you should only work with the ideal client, at the expense of being able to feed your kids. That's not what this is about. But if and when you do choose to work with someone who's not ideal, what I want you to do is do it in a very intentional way, right? In a way that says, okay, hold on a minute. I'm going to do this work because I truly believe I can have an impact. It may not be the thing that I want to focus on, but I still 100% believe I can help this client. They may be a little bit off from the direction I want to take right now. I'm going to do it because it's still the right thing for the client and because it's going to contribute, to my revenue. And also I'm going to remember that this is not the perfect client, and that's okay. And I made the choice. And my job from here on in is to increase the, in the circle chart, the pie chart, is to increase the percentage of great fit clients and decrease the percentage of not great fit clients. So this isn't about having some, unrealistic Pollyanna view of the world where everyone that comes to you is going to be exactly who you want to work with. And certainly that's the goal, but this is all about protecting energy, right? That's what we started talking about. And there are things you can do to meet your practical needs and also protect your energy so that you are still able to work at your best, right? Still able to jump into your zone of genius as required.
Now, all of this requires knowing who the heck you want to work with.
Does that?
Which, we had this conversation with a client this morning. There's two angles to that, right? There's the demographic understanding and there's the psychographic understanding. Most people understand the demographics and yet still fail to define them sufficiently in terms of industry, company size, verticals, etc. Right? And not just that, but the buyer personas within those companies that you want to be working with. The psychographics are really where the battle's won or lost. So when you have your particular buyer in mind, you need to be asking questions like, my ideal client, my ideal buyer, perfect client, if you will. What do they think about the problem that I solve? What are their beliefs around the problem? What solutions have they already looked at? What solutions have they considered? What are their preconceived notions about what a solution should look like? What do they believe would be most effective? What have they tried? All these things. Like we know, for example, we know that our ideal client has a certain worldview on their expertise and on positioning and on marketing. Our clients are not terribly interested in doing a lot of outbound marketing and, really like making a lot of noise and sending lots of outreach messages and, just like harassing people into meetings. That's not their jam, right? Our client loves the idea of power positioning, one of our ideas, right? They love the idea of making a proposition that is attractive, that's magnetic, that pulls people into their ecosystem and makes them want to learn more, as opposed to pushing things on people that they never asked for, right? We know that our client likes that idea. So we build that into our messaging. So we double down on it in the sales conversation, right? We know we're talking to that person. And when somebody else comes along who just doesn't really fit that worldview, we get people all the time say, I want to do tons of cold email. I want to do tons of mass LinkedIn outreach. I want to do tons of cold calling. I want to do all this stuff. I'm just going to, and they have language that they use, right? That's a numbers game. We're just going to, okay. Best of luck to you, but it's not for us. So you got to know that, right? Within your demographic profile, you got to know psychographically, what are the beliefs that they need to have that are going to make them predisposed to working with you? That's the question.
Yeah. And I think there's 2 levels to this. The first is getting clear on that, which a lot of people struggle with, right? And the second is standing firmly in it, because the other thing we see is folks who do get clear on that demographic, write it down somewhere, right? And then out of fear, usually, out of concern that the market's not big enough, that there aren't enough people that want to work with me, that the perfect client doesn't really exist out there, they will immediately step back from that clarity around who their client is. And that, I think, is the riskiest, because they still think they have it figured out, because it is written on that piece of paper somewhere, right? It exists, but they're not acting in alignment with the decisions they've made about who they want to work with. And so, if you're listening to this, I think that's also a question to ask yourself, right? Am I clear? Is question number 1. And am I doing everything that I can do when it comes to how I market my business, how I speak about my offer, who I speak to? Am I doing all of those things in alignment with, or at least getting more into alignment with the decisions I've made about my client?
And the answer to the second question is never yes. There's always gaps. We have gaps. Yes. We could be more true to our positioning, right? Certainly with growth and scale, that becomes a more challenging concept. When you're small and you have a handful of clients, it's pretty easy to stay true to your positioning. And if you can't do it, then that's a bigger problem. As you grow and you scale, and there becomes, diverging paths that you take in different types of clients, you start to lose sight of, what your original positioning was. And sometimes that can evolve and that can change. And sometimes you need to come back to your roots. And so I think that's always a struggle. And, I don't want folks to feel bad, like, oh yeah, I'm not really sticking to what the kind of clients that we want to be working with. Yeah, that's common. That's common, right? The key is to bring it back, but don't beat yourself up over it.
Well, and recognize that it's part of the game, especially with scale. So you were going to start, to your point, with the tight version of who your client is. And then at some point, your revenue goals are going to exceed the volume of those clients that you're bringing in. And so, you diverge a little bit, or you go off the path, or you expand your view, and then you figure it out, right? And things tighten up again. They may not tighten up, back to your point, to the exact same definition, but it's this forever kind of widening and narrowing as you grow, because you're going to test the limits. You're going to see, what does work and what doesn't work. And quite frankly, that will be a lifetime exercise if you continue to expand your business.